In our first video for the iPad and iOS 12, we're going to take a look at the new gestures we have for the iPad. Let's go to my iPad. Now the first one is we can easily go back to our home screen when we're in an app. Let's go and open up Safari here. Now what I want to do is I want to get back to the home screen. All I have to do is just go down to the very bottom of my iPad, and then I just swipe up. And when I swipe up, I'm going to see the dock, and then I'm going to keep swiping up, and then it's going to take me to my home screen. So I'm going to swipe up, and now I let go, and we're back at our home screen. So again, let's open it up. All I do is just swipe up and keep swiping up, and I'm back at the home screen. I just do that with one finger. Another new gesture is the way that we show the control center. Now what we do is we go to the upper right-hand corner of our iPad and swipe down. This is very similar to how it works in an iPhone 10. So now I'm just going to swipe down with one finger, and we're at my control center. I just tap anywhere outside of there, or I can just swipe up, and it disappears. So again, we just swipe down from the upper right-hand corner, and I have my control center. Tap anywhere, and it disappears. So how do we get to our notification center? Well, just like with the iPhone 10, what we do is we go to the upper left-hand corner and swipe down. So I just swipe down with one finger, and there's my notification center. I swipe up, and it brings me back to my home screen. If I was in an app, let's go into Safari. I can also just access it by swiping down and in my control center. Swipe back up, and we're back in my app. I swipe up from the bottom, and now we're back at our home screen. So how do we bring up the dock when we're in an app? Well, let's go back over to Safari here. To bring up the dock, we just swipe up from the bottom, but we don't want to swipe all the way up. So I swipe up, and there's my dock. To hide the dock, I just swipe back down, and it disappears. Swipe up, we're at our dock. If I keep swiping up, it takes me back to my home screen. What about switching apps? Well, that's very similar to swiping up to get to our home screen. I'm going to go back into Safari. If I swipe up a little bit, it brings up the dock. I swipe up a little bit further, we can now access all of our different apps. I just tap on any one of these to open it up. So let's go and open up Apple News. I tap on it, and it opens up. I want to bring up my app switcher back. I swipe up, we have our dock. I keep swiping up, but I don't swipe all the way up, and now I can switch to a different app. Let's go back over to Safari. And now let's go back to our home screen. All the way from the bottom, and I just keep swiping up, and we're back at our home screen. Now we can also go back to our last used app. My last used app was Safari. So how do we do that? Well, we go down to our bottom again, the very bottom of our iPad, and now all we need to do is swipe up a little bit from the bottom edge, and then over to the right, we give a quick slide. So I'm going to swipe up, quick slide, there's my app. I swipe up, quick slide, and I move back another app. I swipe up a little bit, over to the right, we're back in Safari. So that's how we can go back to our last used app. We just swipe up and then go over to the right. Now we can also swipe up and then go to the left or right to switch between our apps. So we know that if we swipe up and go over to the right, it goes to our last used app. I just swipe up, I go over to the right, we're at our last used app. Well, I can also swipe up and go over to the left, and it takes me to Safari. So I can also swipe to the left to go to a previous app. So those are some of the new gestures we have with the iPad. We still have our older gestures. This includes going to the home screen by pinching 4 or 5 fingers together on your screen. We can also go through our apps by swiping horizontally with 4 or 5 fingers at once. And then if we want to go to our app switcher, we can also double click on the home button. So those have not changed, but we do have some new gestures. You can see there's a lot of gestures from the bottom of your iPad. We swipe up a little bit, we get our dock. Swipe up a little bit further, we can easily switch to a different app. We swipe up and go to the right or left, we can switch to a different app. We swipe up and go all the way to the top, it brings us back to our home screen. So those are the new iPad gestures we have in iOS 12.